जय हिंद, जय भारत एंड वेलकम टू डेफ टॉक्स। दिस इज आदि अचिंत। आइए समझें जियोपॉलिटिक्स को एक भारतीय नजरिए से।
So India has a mindset where it hits, it punches below its weight. We have to punch not above our weight. We have to punch not below our weight. We have to increase our weight and punch the post.
ये हमारा सिद्धांत है। हम घर में घुस के मारेंगे।
You know, victims of terrorism do not sit together with perpetrators of terrorism to discuss terrorism.
नमस्कार, जय हिंद एवरीबॉडी। एंड हमारे साथ हैं तिलक देवासर जी। सबसे पहले उनको नमस्कार करके शो में वेलकम करते हैं। सर नमस्ते, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर जॉइनिंग इन। आपके योर इनपुट्स एंड आपके insights on Pakistan especially and the region हमेशा हमको कुछ सिखाते हैं, and looking forward for a whole new set of learning today, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aadi. It's always been a pleasure to come on your show and to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I did a small discussion on Monday where Shia Sunni fault line पे हमने थोड़ी सी बात करी थी. And then I started thinking, I said, यार, this is an angle that people rarely talk about, except for people like you who've written books on Baloch, written books on the Pashtuns, written books on, the entire inner dynamics of Pakistan. अंदर की जो नट बोल्ट हैं पाकिस्तान के, शिया सुन्नी तो एक है सर। हाउ डू यू सी कि ये जो एथनिक डिवाइड है पाकिस्तान के अंदर, एक सेक्टेरियन डिवाइड है, Ahmadis, and there are those 78 different kinds of following that they have, Deobandi, Barelvi, ये वो काफी कुछ है. And I got a little input that the Pakistanis today are realizing they made the biggest mistake in Kashmir. इन लोगों ने देवबंदी भेजे where the Kashmiris are Sufis and they don't kind of link together. तो ये बातें अभी सोशल मीडिया में उनकी चल रही हैं, and certain inputs of certain people were coming out. तो आप क्या, how do you analyze this entire game, sir?
One of the really great reports to come out of Pakistan is something called the Munir Commission report. The Munir and Kayani Commission was set up in the wake of the anti-Ahmadiyya riots in Lahore in the 1950s, 52, I think, 51, 52. So Chief Justice Munir and Justice Kayani was set up a committee. And they talked to about 20 odd ulemas from different sects and said, you want to declare Ahmadis as anti-Muslim? Fine. Before you do that, you must first of all know who or what is a Muslim. Then you can say that Ahmadis are anti-Muslim. Right? And they write in that report, Adi, you won't believe it, he said, much to our regret, none of the ulemas could agree on the definition of who is a Muslim. He said, if we accept the definition of one ulema, 19 others go out of the pale of Islam. And in an Islamic state, they'll all be wajibul qatl. Basically, what they were underlining was that if you go along this sectarian path, you are inviting a great deal of trouble. Because every sect has its own religious identification and ideology. So if you stress one only, you'll have problems with the others. And this is also what Maulana Azad had. His disagreement with Jinnah was precisely this. In an interview, he said that Muslim League is trying to create Pakistan on the basis of Islam. It's fine as their ideology, but nowhere in the Quran or in Islam does it say that you can form a nation on the basis of Islam. He said the loyalty of the subcontinental Muslims is to their sects. And if you play around with this too much, you will land up in trouble. Now you put these two together and then you add to this what Zia did. So when Zia came onto the power and he started this Islamization drive, he focused on the Sunni, precepts on zakat, for example, which was opposed to what the Shias wanted. So there was a huge Shia uprising against Zia. And that's when the sectarian thing became really vicious. The Shias had this Tehreek-e-Nifaz Fiqh Jafariya, which later on led to Sipai Mohammadi, which was an armed organization. The Shia, the Sunnis organized themselves as Anjuman Sipai Sahaba and Lashkar-e-Jangvi. So there would be massive amount of killings. So this Shia Sunni thing across Pakistan, especially in Punjab, and two areas where this has been really bad. One is Gilgit-Baltistan, where was the Ismaili and the Shia population were in a majority, and the second was in Quetta, where the Shia Hazaras had taken refuge due to persecution in Afghanistan by the Amir Abdul Rahman. So they came and settled down in Quetta. So they were targeted, and then when Musharraf was brigade commander, he had carried out a program against the Shias in Gilgit-Baltistan. So these two areas have been especially troublesome, and pockets like Jhang in Punjab and other areas. So this is a major fault line. It has been quiet for the last decade or so, I would say. The Shia-Sunni thing, people have sort of remained calm. But every time during Muharram, I think special precautions have to be taken, and it can erupt at any time. So this is a major fault line, and in its essentials, it harks back to the creation of Pakistan itself and how it was created and how sectarianism was used to gather support from different sects.
When you kind of look at the situation today, sir, Iranian president came there, Raisi. Now Iran is a Shia country, uh, and if you go back into history, sir, 1979, where, sorry to say, but you know what hit the fan in the region with Afghanistan ka jo chakkar hua tha, the Soviets came in, and the so-called Shia revolution in Iran. Uh, the fight between the Shia and Sunni kind of intensified. Saudi on one side, Iranians on the other side, and ईरान ने अपने काफी assets बनाए थे. And if you remember, the most of the landlords were Shia in certain regions. So Pakistani army created that organization. I forget, SPS was the short form of it.
Sipai Sahaba, Pakistan.
Ah,
Anjuman Sipai Sahaba, which was,
correct.
the acronym was ASS. Then they realized that it's not worth it. So then they changed the name to Anjuman Sipai
Yeah,
Sahaba, Pakistan,
yeah.
SSP.
SSP. Correct. Now, recently also जब ये आए थे सर, क्या नाम है, राइसी साहब came, we noted a protest in Gilgit-Baltistan by the same organization. This organization obviously is part of the Pakistani army. Now, the question I'm asking you is, sir, did Iranian president come here to stoke a little bit of sectarianism within Pakistan to kind of remind Pakistan कि भाई तुम्हारे 30% अभी भी शिया हैं, to just calm down?
It's a very interesting dynamic. If you just backtrack a little bit, after Shehbaz Sharif was sworn in as Prime Minister, his first visit was to Saudi Arabia in March.
Mm-hmm.
Dua salam karne gaye the to Saudi Arabia when they talked about a 5 billion investment. Then, in April, in April. Then when he came back, the Saudi foreign minister came to look at what are the projects which Saudi Arabia can do. Soon thereafter, the Iranian came.
Ji.
Rising, he came thereafter. So in one sense, Pakistan has been trying to balance, and the Saudis and Iran are also sort of playing ki lest this space be monopolized by the other person. So both are making visits and both are showing interest. The one difference is that the Saudis have got money to put on the table. Right? So Pakistan was expecting much more, but the Saudis have decided to up their safe deposit, which is about 3 billion, make this in the first phase to 5 billion, and look at other investment opportunities. The kind of sweet deals that Pakistan is offering to the Saudis. The rate of interest in one particular mining project in Kuzar is 50%. Can you imagine a deal where the rate of return is 50%? Others are 20%, some is 34%. They want to set them, they have offered a cattle farm of 30,000 head of cattle, producing 6,000 tons of meat annually for Saudi Arabia. So, really sweetheart deals to get some kind of a Saudi. Now, Iran doesn't have that kind of money, or at least it can't put down that kind of money on the table, also because of US sanctions. But what Iran has is that old Iran Pakistan pipeline, gas pipeline, deal for which was signed in 2009. And the agreement was that Iran will complete its side of the pipeline, about 1100 kilometers from the South Pars gas field, and Pakistan would create or build 780 kilometers of pipeline up to Jacobabad in Sindh. This is 2009. 2012, Iran had created or built its pipeline. No work was started in Pakistan. They didn't have the money and they were worried about the US sanctions. The penalty clause in that agreement of 2009 is $1 million a day. That if you don't start taking gas within 3 years or 4 years, you have to pay a penalty of $1 million a day. Today, the penalty is worth $18 billion.
Mhm.
If Iran takes Pakistan to the international court, they just take their pants off because there's no way Pakistan can pay any of this. And this is much more than the investment which the Saudis are planning to do. So what the Pakistanis have done is try to be very smart about it. They said we're going to be building a 50-kilometer long pipeline from the Iran border to Gwadar.
Mm.
And in bravado, they said we don't need US permission for this. It is only when the pipeline gets connected to the Iranian pipeline will the sanctions kick in. So trying to be too clever by half. But the interesting thing here, Adi, is that other countries have got waivers from the US. You see, like Greece, Turkey, there are three, four other countries which have got waivers from the US on to get Iranian oil.
Even we.
Pakistan hasn't but Pakistan has not even asked for waiver. So Iran says, hey, you are telling us there are US sanctions, but you haven't even asked for waiver. How do you know the US will not give it? And I can't understand why the US is not seeking the waiver. Why Pakistan is not seeking the waiver from the US. So Pakistan, in trying to balance Saudi and Iran, is really stuck up in a very hard corner as far as Iran is concerned because of this old project of the pipeline.
Ji.
And
So,
also,
but
I think
mm,
Iran, so coming to I'm sorry, I digressed, but coming back to your question, yes, Iran wants to keep giving a signal to Pakistan that don't think that you are in the Saudi camp. You can't afford to be totally in the Saudi camp simply because the number of Shias, we share a boundary with you, we share a land border with you. Saudi Arabia is away. So, and then let's not forget, Iran is now on a pretty good wicket with the Taliban, right? And they are trying to balance their relations with Pakistan with their relations with Taliban.
mm,
Iran also knows what the Taliban Pakistan relations are. And Iran is smart enough to work with the Taliban to pressurize Pakistan. So there are these various different kind of dynamic at play, which Pakistan needs to be conscious of, and I'm sure they're conscious of it, and they need to be very, very careful when they're dealing with Iran and when they're dealing with Saudi Arabia.
the interesting thing जो मैं देख रहा हूँ sir is Pashtuns का fault line तो आ रहा है. We know that there is that area in the north which is creating a huge fault line for Pakistan. We know the Baloch abhi kafi are getting kind of into shape, and they are kind of exerting themselves, and they're saying, "Wait, hello, Baloch means Baloch. We are Baloch." And I think that Baloch thing is coming out more than, especially in there, this thing, it's more than the Islam part till now.
Yeah.
Let me make it very clear. It doesn't take much time for these guys to flip, but and there are signs of it as well. Um, when you see this, there is also another small fault line, which is the non-Punjabi Musliman, which comes out, and which is divided between Wahhabi, Barelvi, and that entire sect. There are 78 different kinds of thought processes and stuff like that, which is so-called existing in Pakistan. Ye, how do you see these divisions? Because they are not friendly with each other. The Barelvis hate the Deobandis. Uh, in the middle, there is a sprinkling of Pashtuns, there's a sprinkling of Baloch, there's a sprinkling of Shia, there's a sprinkling of Ahmadiyas. Leave alone the minorities which are there. Now, how does this all literally fester into a soup bowl, sir?
The interesting thing is that the bulk of the sectarian issue and radicalization is actually in Punjab.
Hmm. That's why the Punjabi
Less in,
Muslims.
yeah, less in Sindh, Balochistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. There is will deal with that separately. But
Hmm.
bulk of it is happening in Punjab. In
True.
fact, look at all the organizations, whether it's a Lashkar-e-Jangvi, Sepai-Mohammadi, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is Ahle Hadith and Jaish-e-Mohammed. They are all based in Punjab. But bulk of the violence takes place outside of Punjab. So Punjab is actually sitting on a festering volcano. It can erupt if the sectarian war starts taking place in Punjab itself. It can really blow up badly. Now,
Hmm.
in Sindh, it has had a long tradition of a Sufi culture, Sufi Barelvi culture. Therefore, so far, this sectarianism has not been too strong in Sindh. Now, of course, the Lashkar-e-Taiba has set up a lot of madrasas and mosques all along the India-Sindh border.
Ji.
As a sort of a defensive line vis-a-vis India. So there's a
Hmm.
little bit of that happening now. And then, of course, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in the frontier, to use Pashtuns as cannon fodder for their jihadi, foreign policy goals, they have been infusing and giving injections of religion and jihad in KPK. So there has been a change in the identity of the Pashtuns from being nationalist and conservative to becoming jihadis. That is going to take, once the genie is out of the bottle, religious genie, it's going to take time to sort of come back into the bottle and to sort of settle down. And this is one thing which, for example, if the PTM is there, they are making sure that this religious thing is put back and they're looking at a tribal constitutional civil rights movement. Even the TTP of late, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, is not talking so much of imposition of Sharia and the religious identity of the Pashtuns, we're talking in terms of a nationalist identity. That we are Pashtun nationalists. We want our own governance system in the form of FATA. We want that merger to be, the FATA to be demerged. So they are also stressing the non-religious identity of the Pashtuns. So let's see how it develops and how far it actually goes. But the real problem will continue to be in Punjab for a long time.
Sir, the
The problem of religious
Pashtun,
identity.
the Pashtun today, sir, is a identity in Pakistan which maybe आगे जाके, because I'm saying this with a bit of an understanding of the Pakistani जो mindset है इनका, सोच जिसको बोलते हैं ना, the way that the attacks are going on, how near is Pashtun hate within the Punjabi Musliman?
You mean the Punjabis hating the Pashtuns or the Pashtuns hating the Punjabis?
No, Pashtuns already hate the Punjabis, but I'm saying the
Yeah.
Punjabis hating the Pashtuns.
There is a lot of ethnic profiling of Pashtuns in Punjab. It's already there. Even in textbooks, there were some, I mentioned in my book, there were some horrific examples of where the Pashtuns were referred to in Punjabi textbooks. They were all, and instructions were issued that if you see somebody suspicious looking, dressed in a Pashtun, Pathan dress and things, immediately report to the police station. So there is a lot of that already in Punjab. So that animosity against the Pashtuns is already there. And then the fact that Pakistan is pushing out about 1.7 million Afghan refugees who are undocumented and pushing them out in a very vicious manner, not allowed to take property, herding them into trucks and taking them to the border and pushing them out, has
Hmm.
created a lot of resentment, reinforced the resentment among the Pashtuns, and also the resentment amongst Punjabis have come out into the open. So it's very much there.
Because I mean, see, right now, whatever said and done, it is not coming out इतनी जोर से कि भाई there is hatred and this and that. It's not there. People don't say that Pashtuns are kind of, kicking us and all that stuff. वो नहीं है. That is not the point. Sir, moving on, there is also another fault line which is there in Gilgit-Baltistan. Now, the Gilgit-Baltistanis and that entire region does not believe in this sect of Islam. उनका तो अलग ही है और वहां पर काफी सारे शियाज are there, huge population of Shias there. And how does this fit into the mainstream, sir, within Pakistan? Because the Pakistanis are facing challenges in that region. काफी
So,
ज्यादा.
this is was a predominantly Shia, and in pockets were Ismailis, the Aga Khan followers. And over a period of time, gradually the Sunnis from KPK and Frontier have been encroaching, or I won't say encroaching, have been moving into certain districts of Gilgit-Baltistan. So that has changed both the religious composition as well as the ethnic composition of Gilgit-Baltistan. And so many districts which were Shia at one time are now become either mixed or have become Sunni majority. And this is one of the things that has been the gradual Sunnification of Gilgit has been happening right since 1947. Because even then, the leaders of the newly created state of Pakistan were skeptical about Gilgit-Baltistan.
Mm-hmm.
So they said we must push in and have enough Sunni population in Gilgit-Baltistan. So frequently, as I mentioned, especially when Musharraf was there have been frequently outbreak of sectarian violence because of the encroachment of the Sunni Muslims into Gilgit-Baltistan. The current turmoil which is taking place or which took place the last 4 or 5 months was due to the issue of wheat subsidy. So that became the trigger. You see, under Bhutto, they have been promised that the wheat they will be provided in a subsidized manner. Subsequently, the caretaker government decided to do away with the subsidy or reduce the subsidy, so the prices of wheat shot up. So there were a lot of protests. And when you have protests, then they gradually escalate and cascade into something more than just protests about the original issue. So there is resentment. You see, the biggest resentment in Gilgit-Baltistan is that their status is not defined. Even after 70 years, they are not a part of Pakistan as per the
They can't
constitution.
vote. They can't vote.
Yeah, yeah. And they're not there. There's been a demand that at least we should have representation in the National Assembly, or we should form our own laws. How are you taxing us, without representation? So this has happened, and to have talked about intermittently. The reason Pakistan has been unable to do anything about it is that they've set up 3 committees, to examine if Gilgit-Baltistan can be merged and made into a fifth province. The last was under when the Chinese pressurized them. Look, CPEC passes through this. We are investing so much of money. You at least make sure that this is a province of Pakistan. These 3 committees have all sort of recommended that don't do it, because if you do, then you lose your status under the UN resolutions. You will be
Correct.
changing the status. And then if you break these UN resolutions, you have no locus standi as far as the Kashmir issue is concerned. Because don't forget, Pakistan even broke the standstill agreement with the Maharaja way back in 1947. So you've broken the standstill agreement, you break the UN resolutions. Who are you in Kashmir? What is your locus standi? And that's the reason why they have not been able to do anything about Gilgit-Baltistan. So there is a lot of resentment amongst the people that, who are we? What are we? Are we part of Pakistan? We're not part of Pakistan. Why don't we have constitutional rights? Why don't we have judicial rights? Rights like the other people. We don't have any representation. We can't legislate. So there is that resentment also. And there is hardly any development over there.
Correct. So, when you look at Afghanistan today, in last week there was an attack on a Shia mosque, right? To me, that is very curious. Because if you remember, uh, the explosion in Iraq, if you remember, by Baghdadi, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the first so-called leader of the ISIS, was started like this only, bombings in mosques and stuff like that. Today in Afghanistan, there are protests in Baluchistan, which are again, the northern province, which is where the CPEC is supposed to kind of come into Afghanistan. What is happening here, sir? Because The Chinese are supposed to have started the construction of that road. I have photographic proof uh, of that happening. It's difficult. It's the area. It's going to take them years to do it, but it's happening. And
So that. Sorry, go ahead.
protests come up there. Sectarian violence starts in Afghanistan. These are telltale signs of something terrible happening in this region.
You see that particular area, which is the Wakan corridor. Now, it's a very interesting story of the Wakan corridor. In the 1890s, as a result of the Great Game, the Amir of Afghanistan was forced literally to take control of this corridor.
Mm.
He didn't want it. He said, I don't want, in his words, Kyrgyz bandits. I don't want them in my country. But he was persuaded by Russia and by Great Britain to take control of this area so that the Russian Empire and the British Empire do not meet. They have frontiers of separation and not frontiers of connection with each
Connection.
other.
Okay.
So this narrow strip, which is about 350 kilometers long and 19 to 40 or 50 kilometers across, was handed over to the Amir, and the British paid him an annual subsidy. I forget how much it was. They bribed him to take control of this area so the Russian and British empires don't meet. It's literally the roof of the world. It's called Bame something, which means the roof of the world. It's sparsely populated. It's where three mountain chains actually meet,
The
and
Pamirs, Himalayas, and the
Karakoram and the Hindu Kush.
Hindu Kush.
The Wakis who stay there are actually Ismailis, and there are very about 10 to 15,000 of them who stay over there, and they are one of the most remote areas. Many of them are not even aware that the Soviets invaded in the 70s, 80s, and the US was invaded. They're totally cut off. Now that China is also looking for alternatives, and the Taliban are also looking for alternative trade routes. Therefore, they have given one Chabahar, they gave $15,000 or $30,000 to Iran
30,
to develop the Chabahar.
35 million, sir.
35 million, sorry, 35
Yeah.
million. So they're also looking for a land access to China through the Wakan. So you're right, the Chinese have built. The Taliban have also built a road, about 50 kilometers road, connecting up to the Chinese border. It has not been asphalted yet. It's a jeep track kind of a thing, but it is there. And they hope to be able to export, things like pine nuts and whatever they have to export, and also link up to the network with China. So as an alternative to Pakistan. Now, despite everything, the Chinese are skeptical. And the reason why Chinese are skeptical is that there are reported to be about 500 ETIM people in Baluchistan. Once you have a road connectivity, it's easy for the Uyghurs to enter and exit from here. And the only China only has border guards. It's called the Wakir Pass. They only have border guards here. So they're not sure they want to have such an easy ingress and egress for the ETIM to enter right into the heart of Xinjiang. So that's a different security dynamic. Yes, the Chinese would really like to, for their economic interests, to get into Afghanistan, to have another land route into Afghanistan. But what do they do about the ETIM? So they are playing it a bit cautiously. And this is a very vital corridor, because on the one hand, it connects Afghanistan to China. It connects to Tajikistan, the Gorno-Badakhshan area, autonomous region of Tajikistan, and to Gilgit of Pakistan. So it's a corridor which 4 countries are surrounding. So strategically of great significance. The unrest there is now because people, when traders have come in and people have bought, suddenly these guys realize, what is the Islamic Emirate all about? They weren't aware of what is happening inside Afghanistan. The kind of brutality of the Taliban or their kind of ways. And the Taliban, have been searching houses. They've acted funny with women. And these guys have been totally cut off from the rest of the world for decades, if not centuries. So there is some sort of, but the population is about 10 to 15,000.
Yeah, it's not big.
It's not big, but yes, it is it can grow up into a, it is catch the attention of the world. But it's a very unhospitable area.
Yeah. And
Inhospitable.
that's one of the reasons why Chinese also, if you read Chinese reports, they're saying कि भाई यहाँ पर काम करना बड़ा मुश्किल है. It's
Yeah.
gonna take us years to kind of build this road, which is
Even though Chinese
300
infrastructure building is, they've done a lot
fast.
of,
Yeah,
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 fast and in very inhospitable terrain. But this will take a special human effort, and then will it be worth it? Will it be worth it?
yeah, absolutely. So when we see the game, right now, and the Chinese will have to become pro Pashtun little bit, right? Because of the Taliban and their game. Uh, and if the US game plan kind of works out where the Pakistanis are now starting to roll back uh, the Chinese from Pakistan, and we've seen these attacks. A day for yesterday, there's a report where people are saying कि साहब पाकिस्तान ने बोला है कि चाइनीज को बिल्कुल भी हम लोग बिना प्रोटेक्शन और बिना आर्मर्ड व्हीकल के बाहर नहीं जाने देंगे. Right, so there is that threat level perception which is already there, and ये काफी कुछ चल रहा है. There's a lot which is happening at the back end. So with the Chinese moving away, the Pashtuns kind of opening their arms to China, Pakistan sitting there looking, भैया ये तो गया मेरे हाथ से. What do you think will be the reaction?
See, for Chinese to move in bulletproof vehicles, the question is who's going to pay for the bulletproof vehicles? That's what happened in the recent attack on the Chinese. The vehicle was not bulletproof or bomb proof because they couldn't decide who would have paid for it.
Hmm.
So if you're going to have it a blanket thing all over Pakistan, I don't think so the Chinese will be able to move at all. Who's going to pay for it? Now, about the Pashtuns, the Chinese are definitely in touch with the Taliban. They've exchanged ambassadors without official recognition. Chinese are keen to get on with the mineral extraction from Afghanistan. But the Chinese have been very smart about this. So, what they have done is they've set up a trilateral foreign minister or commission meeting between China, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Right? That was one. And second, they have another dialogue going on between China, Pakistan, and Iran
Iran.
because they feel that protection of their interests in the BRI in Pakistan, they need to make sure that both Iran and Pakistan are on board to protect their interests. And neither of them are funding or supporting any of these terrorist groups who are targeting them. Similarly,
जी.
with Afghanistan and Pakistan, the Chinese are trying to show that look, if you have better relationship, we are then in a position to get on with it.
Hmm.
But the problem between Taliban and Pakistan is so deep rooted. I don't think so. The Chinese are going to be very successful, at least
Yeah.
certainly not in the short or the medium term.
So
So I think the Chinese are looking at this very carefully because money is involved. Their access, to the sea, to the Arabian Sea, to the larger Indian Ocean, all that is involved. And they also want to hedge their bets. You see, to have CPEC, Afghanistan being part of the CPEC, what does it mean? Afghanistan really has nothing apart from their minerals, which of interest to China, except for a route,
into
alternate route.
Iran and
Yeah. So China is looking at in the long term and all this, and this is something that I think Pakistan will be concerned about,
hmm.
over the long term.
Let me explain to the audience, guys. The Chinese BRI in the north, जो है ऊपर वाली जो road है above the Caspian Sea, that thing either goes through Ukraine or Belarus. Now Ukraine is upside down right now, and Belarus is a pro-Russia country, so the Europeans will not accept it. So there's a problem there. So Chinese are now looking at a route which is going through Afghanistan into Iran, takes a northern turn into Azerbaijan Armenia region, where there is a corridor called the Zagreb corridor. It connects into that and goes into Turkey and into the into Europe from there. So ये एक वो route देखने की कोशिश कर रहा है. And secondly, there's another route that they are trying, which is the Caspian Sea route, which is where Azerbaijan becomes very important for China. वो Tajikistan इधर होते हुए it comes into the Caspian Sea. It goes into not Tajikistan, Kazakhstan and all that. It comes into the Caspian Sea, crosses into Baku, and then goes back same route into Turkey and beyond. So that's the game that sir is referring to. Sir, I want to talk about Balochistan the next, and you know, there is a thing called the playground of empires, right? Uh, Balochistan today is actually becoming the playground of empires. When you look at it, you've got everybody there. Let's start with smaller countries. You've got the Iranians sitting there. You've got Pakistan itself, of course, sitting there. You've got interests from Oman, Saudi, and all these countries also, which are there. In the larger powers, you've got India's interest, which is there. Openly, we won't say that we have an interest there, but we do. You've got Russia there, right? Which is wanting to re-engage because it does not want this ISKP elements to hit it again. You've got Iran there. You've got China there. You've got the Americans there. Now, this is like a khichdi of empires, a playground of empires of sorts. So, from your analysis and understanding of the Baloch, sir, how do you see this situation opening forward?
You see, one thing for the Baloch, any international attention on Balochistan is something which they look for. Because so far, the Baloch issue has not received international attention, which the
Mhm.
Baloch have been craving for. So they want that the human rights violations, the kill and dump policy, the missing persons issues should get international recognition. I mentioned an incident in my book. The first time Henry Kissinger visited Pakistan in the 1960s, that time the 62 insurgency had just taken off. And somebody asked him, he was a Harvard professor at that time, and somebody asked him, "What do you have to say about the Balochistan issue?" And he said, "I wouldn't even know what it was even if it hit me in the face." That was a lack of awareness of this. Now that there is greater awareness because A, of CPEC, because of the possibility of various pipelines, so it has taken on a greater traction. Its strategic value is also increased, as you know, as you mentioned, because it is something which Iran is very vulnerable to because of its own Baloch population in Sistan, Baluchistan. Incidentally, after the last spat between Pakistan and Iran, now you have a Pakistani colonel who's
Mhm.
based in Zaidan, and one IRGC officer is going to be based in Turbat to make sure that the lines of communication, are sort of not disrupted. So yes, so different people have got different interests in Balochistan, but the Baloch are one people who are totally stuck on the ground. They're absolutely grounded, and they want international attention. They don't need anybody to help them teach them fight. They've got enough tie-up with the TTP and the Taliban to get weaponry, from the Taliban for
Mhm.
weapons.
Mhm.
They will
Mhm.
not allow any physical interference in Balochistan. If anybody thinks that they can come over there and carve out a territory for themselves, is sadly mistaken. They haven't allowed the Chinese, they will not allow anybody else either. But yes, if somebody is willing to push their case in international forums about human rights violations, talk about issues in Geneva, in the Human Rights Council, or in the General Assembly, or in the US Congress, the British Parliament, they'll more than welcome that. But beyond that, if anybody thinks they can, Baloch will not do anybody else's bidding. They will continue to do what they want, what they feel is the right thing to do.
You mentioned that the Baloch have kind of fixed in with the TTP and the Afghans and stuff like that. There was a Baloch leader called, there was a TTP leader called something Baloch. I sent you that statement as well, where he said that Baloch need to now understand that you guys have been running around uh, behind this so-called democracy, which has given you nothing. You need to come into the fold of Islam to kind of figure out how you can take your situation forward. One, a comment on this. Two, also, since I've mentioned TTP and all that, there are loads of these little terror organizations which is there. The ISKP, we know, have training grounds there. The ISPP, the Valaya, this thing guys have the training ground there. By the way, they are aligned with the BLA. So they attack the Pakistani army and they come from the same head. So both are IS. One is with the Pakistani army. These guys attack the Pakistani army. And I've got enough incidents in the past 3 years where they've actually hit out pretty hard. You've got multiple other little ye Jaishul Adal and all that stuff, which is controlled by the Mossad and the CIA and all that. Multiple other organizations which are there in Balochistan. So how does this again further addition of masala into that alphabet soup come into place, sir?
So the first thing about, you see, the Baloch are conservative. They're not like the Pashtuns in terms
Hmm.
of religion. There were very sort of interesting incidents when during Ramzan, a Baloch was asked, "How come you're not fasting?"
Hmm.
So he said, "My Sardar is fasting for me. I don't need to fast." Right? And then the British asked the Baloch, "How do you want to be? How do you want the civil matters to be treated?" He said, "By Riwad." And the Pashtuns said, "By Sharia." So that was the difference. So the Baloch are Muslim, are Sunnis, but they don't place so much of emphasis on the daily happenings of religion. So even if
Hmm.
somebody says, "Come to the fold of Islam," there have been Baloch who have switched because of could be various reasons, but I don't see that happening for a long time. And then you see there are a category of Baloch who are Zikris, on the Makran coast. This is a sect which is the leader originally came from India, from Jaunpur,
India. Yeah.
something Jaunpuri, and he sort of prayed in Turbat, and he's considered there the Mehdi, the Mehdi who came, and so Islam has this thing about the Mehdi coming. So then you have the Zikris. So I don't see the Baloch going the Pashtun way in terms of religious fundamentals.
Radicalization. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. That's
On the
interesting.
other
That's
issue
that's
of on the other issue of the various groups,
hmm.
you see, because the territory is so huge, and there are open spaces where there is no habitation, no civilization. So people have come and will come, and these various groups will find shelter over there. I mean, the TTP also has got a tie-up with the Baloch groups in
Yep.
Makran and in Kalat, apart from being in northern Balochistan. Similarly, with the IS, you see, ISKP and ISPP, again, labels are there. Labels are good for people to put labels. On the ground itself, I'm not sure whether they see themselves as very distinct.
Yeah. They
It's
don't.
useful. It is useful to say, भाई ये तो ISPP है और ये तो ISKP है. IB की report में सर वो तो ISPP का tag था. नहीं 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 ISKP का. But I don't think so in practice. These things really make a difference. So yes, there'll be a lot of people, different groups like Jaish-e-Adal you mentioned. They will find it useful to take foreign support,
Hmm.
but they will do what they ultimately, if it is so, suits their purpose or not. Jaish-e-Adal, for example, is fighting against the Shia regime in Iran because the Shias are cracking down on the Baloch because they are Sunnis,
Hmm. Hmm.
to make sure that they don't go the Pakistani Baloch way. So there is bound to be a reaction. And that's what the Jaish-e-Adal is doing. Now, if somebody finds that useful, Jaish-e-Adal will do their bidding because it also suits their purpose.
Such an alphabet soup, sir. I want to talk about another very interesting thing that came in. Just sorry, I just had a bot attack, so I had to deal with that. Um, you know, there was an attack on the Pakistani forces on the 20th of April. Okay, okay, you can hear me, sir.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So there was a attack on the Pakistani armed forces on the 20th of April, sir. You had nothing coming out. Nobody took any this thing, responsibility and everything like that. About 4 5 days ago, a note came out saying Sindhu Desh takes responsibility for this. I was like, whoa, ye kahan se aaya, bhai? I mean, we know there is a group and this and that. And here is now they coming out and saying, boss, yeah, we did this. And this happened inside Balochistan. It didn't happen inside Sindh. The attack was inside Balochistan. So how do you categorize this now? A new group or a new organization, or have they also done some Charlie whiskey with the TTP, with the Afghan Taliban, or with the Iranians, or with whoever they and कि भैया अब हम भी शुरू होते हैं.
You see, there has been a deep-seated alienation in Sindh right since 1947.
Hmm.
You know, Sindh was the first province that supported the Pakistan resolution of the Lahore
Yep.
resolution of 1940. It was also the first assembly that voted in favor of Pakistan in 1947. And people believe that this was done because the Sindhis wanted autonomy, which Jinnah had promised. And the leader was Ghulam Murtaza Sayyid, GM Sayyid. But as soon as GM Sayyid realized what Pakistan was all about, he quit the Muslim League, called partition unnatural, and became an ideologue for Sindhi nationalism.
Hmm.
Subsequently, he wrote his book, Sindhu Desh, A Nation in Chains. And in 1972, he set up the uh, Jai Sindh Mahaz, JSM. And he spent the next 30 years of his life in prison, in and out of prison, very much like Bacha Khan, Abdul Ghaffar Khan, very much like him. He was in and
Hmm.
out of jail for the next 30 years. And the reason for Sindhi alienation was two or three. One, in 47, about 18% of the Muhajirs who were coming from India settled in Karachi and Hyderabad, reduced Sindhi to a minority in these places. Second, the Urdu became the national language, so the Sindhis had to learn Urdu to compete for government jobs and positions. About 60% of Pakistan's resources are produced in Sindh, especially from Karachi. But bulk of the investment and government budget goes to Punjab. So then they lost their capital. Karachi became the national capital, and the Sindhis were booted out. So, one thing after the other. Then you had this one unit plan of 1955, when all the provinces of West Pakistan were merged into a single West Pakistan to compete with the East Pakistan Bengalis, because Bengalis had more population. So instead of having four provinces versus one, they said 1:1 province hoga, which meant that the provincial identity of Sindh, KPK, and
Yeah.
Baluchistan was wiped out. So all this resentment built up, and 1972, the GM says set up the Jai Sindh Mahaz. And because of the Pakistan Army's crackdown, enforced disappearances, kill and dump, missing persons, they could not start a democratic protest movement. So they took it to an armed struggle. And since then, intermittently, they've been carrying out attacks which are not reported too much in the media. But they suffer from
Hmm.
weaknesses. One is they've not been able to unite. And so long as GM Sayed was there was some sort of a unity. But they've not been able to unite. They've broken up into many, many groups, which the Pakistan army has found then very easy to play against each other or to suppress. And second, interestingly, the main rich people, the financiers and the capitalists, were the Hindus. So when they left in 1947, they took away what they could have contributed intellectually, financially, politically from the Sindhi movement. And they have not been able to recover from that. So it is nascent, there is a lot of alienation. But unlike the Baloch and unlike the Pashtuns, they have not got their act together yet.
Hmm. So it's
So
basically what
this,
happened, similar to what happened in Kashmir when the Kashmiri Pandits left. The entire thing just.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
So they haven't been able to get their act together, but the alienation, because it is there, and if they were to come across with another leader, like what GM Sayed was, then maybe it will take on. And then the other debilitating factor for the nationalist movement in Sindh is the presence of the PPP. Because of the popularity of the Bhuttos, whenever it comes to any democratic movement or national elections or anything like that, it's the PPP that sweeps.
Correct.
So the Sindhi nationalists also vote tactically to make sure that a Sindhi, they look at PPP as a Sindhi party, that a Sindhi party comes to the fore rather than any of the national parties coming to the fore. To that extent, they have supported the PPP. But the PPP hasn't done very much or hasn't done anything at all for Sindh and for Sindh issues.
Interesting. Interesting. Uh,
And very
guys,
interesting,
let's,
one interesting sidelight.
sir.
In 18, I am very fond of history. So in 1843, Sindh was taken over by the British by Charles Napier. He was not authorized to do so from the Bombay presidency, but he came and he found, so he took it over. Then he sent a telegram to Calcutta, just one word called Pekavi. Now, Pekavi is a Latin word which means I have sinned. So he was punning on the word Sindh by saying I have sinned. So he just said Pekavi, I have sinned. Very interesting sort of a sidelight.
Wow. That's an interesting anecdote, I must say.
Yeah.
Uh, guys, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into some of your questions and some of your comments. I think this is, if I may say, this is one of the first comprehensive ethnic discussion on Pakistan, which is where uh, you know we've covered a kind of a plethora of events around uh, and connected them with the ethnic fault lines, ethnic divisions within Pakistan, because people don't talk about this game. Yeah,
Yeah.
Pashtuns and this
So,
and that is there. Fair enough.
so this is the first time we've talked about Sindh. This is the first time we've talked about the Wakan corridor and the people there and the Chinese dynamics. The first time the dynamics between Iran and Saudi Arabia in Pakistan and the Iran Pakistan pipeline. So yes, it's been a different and interesting discussion, I thought.
Yes, sir. So, guys, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. We need to get 1,000 likes, so please hit that like button hard. Uh, and of course, yes, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and share these videos with your friends and family, people who are interested in geopolitics. सबसे ज़्यादा और आप लोग इस चैनल की तरफ you can contribute using the QR code for or PayPal for direct contributions, or you can use super stickers, super chats, or members to become to contribute towards this channel. Tusharji, thank you so much for your membership. Shunya Saab, thank you so much. Most of what I write gets blocked by YouTube. Gentlemen, I hope you guys are mind readers. Jai Hind. Yeah, man, YouTube is being a little funny. You guys know that my channel is also on a little bit of a slowdown. They've kind of done that to a lot of the nationalist channels. So sorry about that, but thanks for your contribution. They've done this, huh? They've kind of reduced the volume of our channels. A lot of us
Really?
are facing this. Yeah. A lot of us are facing this challenge.
Part
So
of
they do
the
that.
deep
Yeah,
state
yeah.
strategy.
Can you imagine? I mean, would you believe it? My recommendations has gone down by 11%. I used to get 15 to 17,000 subscribers a month. Now I'm getting 8.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's what they do. And the minute the election gets over, everything will get open.
get
That's
back
not a
to normal.
problem.
Yeah.
हाँ, पैसे उनको भी बनाने हैं ना सर. तो India, there's a huge revenue base. Norman Sheikh Saab, thank you so much. Earlier, every penny earned from the sale of mines in Panjshir went to the warlords Masood family. It now goes to the state. Indian businessmen are in Panjshir. Are welcome. I think somebody was already there last week. Um, a large businessman. There was no media report, but Norman was kind enough of actually sending me a photograph of it. So,
Okay.
your opinion, sir?
No, I'm mining is one of the areas activities that the Taliban have developing very well. It was always there. Mines were a very profitable source in Afghanistan. I think the Taliban have done it even well. And in one case, I think the Al Qaeda have been given 1 or 2 mines to mine, and whatever profit from that to use that as their money.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure this in Panjshir what the businessmen are doing. I don't know about this, but Taliban are sort of leveraging the mines very well for their own budgetary support, as well as to farm out to various people.
Srinivaji, thank you so much. Pranams to both. Big fan of Tilak sir's elegant explanations and his composure. Question: how can Taliban help India check Pakistan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Srinivas. How can Taliban help India to check Pakistan? You see, I think one of the things that Taliban has realized once they know what Pakistan was all about, they always knew it, but now that they're in power, they can do something about it. Our interest in is to ensure that the camps of the Lashkar and the Jaish, which were in these
Hmm.
places in Afghanistan, in Nangarhar, in Kunar, and places like that, are no longer supported by the Taliban, or Taliban does not allow the presence of these anti-India Pakistani groups.
Ji.
So this is something that has been made clear to the Taliban, and let's see how much they deliver on their promises. That's the critical thing for us.
That's true, sir. Uh, Abhishek ji, you say, sir, can Afghanistan actually succeed as a nation without Western or Chinese support? Do you see any leader that can unite the tribes, or will the tribal wars continue?
You see, if you look at Taliban and the people who have working, the UN organizations, etc., working, they are quite amazed at how much the Taliban have actually succeeded in governance. One example, that canal we talked about in one of our earlier programs, the Kosh-Tepa Canal, which is they have built it about 285-kilometer long canal. They have built it without any foreign funding. Through their own resources, they are mobilized to irrigate northern Afghanistan. Corruption is down to very, very little, if at all. Unlike the former Karzai and Ghani government, where one of the biggest drains on the economy was corruption,
Corruption.
under the Taliban regime, you don't hear of corruption. So they are actually succeeding. And without Western, see, there is Western support because a lot of money comes to the NGOs
Hmm.
to run their various programs. And right now, because the Taliban system is such that they make sure there is no tribal infighting. Even within the Taliban know that there are differences of opinion between, let's say, the Gilzais and the Duranis, the Zadrans, the Haqqanis. But they know that if they start infighting, they will collapse. People will take advantage of it. So they are making sure there is no tribal infighting. And the system is working, you know. So how long it works, that's a different story. But right now, I think the Taliban are succeeding. I mean, just look
Hmm.
at it. The number of refugees that have been Pakistan has pushed back. They have been absorbed in Afghanistan without a fuss.
Yes.
Everywhere else, there have been camps and UNHRC and all those kind of things will be there. Taliban have managed to do it.
There's a lot of help they're getting, which is there. I mean, now it's in the open about the $80 million, 60 to $80 million a week that comes to them. We are sending a lot of food. But yes, I agree with you. The organization which the Taliban had been able to build up to distribute all this stuff and not to have leakages and stuff like that,
Yeah, that's the important
pretty
thing.
good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Batliwala thank you so much. Interesting question he puts out. If the Pakistanis are offering sweet deals of 20 to 50% return, won't that make the Chinese also demand more?
True. Yes. Good point. But the
Very
Chinese
good.
know that the Pakis are not going to be able to pay. The Chinese know that. You see, even on the power plants, the sovereign guarantee is about 20 to 24%.
Yeah.
But Pakistan says, sorry, हमारे पास पैसे नहीं है. Roll over. So the Chinese power producers are crying because their money has not been repatriated, not been sent. They promised the Saudis that yes, we'll prioritize sending you the money. Ultimately, Saudis will have to give them money to get the money back. 50% rate of return. How is it possible? 12% is difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
24% is, it's, I don't know how the country even accept such a sweetheart deal.
So might I correct you here with all due respect? Pakistan is not a country, sir. Sorry.
Okay. You know, one interesting thing I must tell you. Pakistan keeps referring to Saudi Arabia as a brotherly country.
Sir.
In the recent exchanges, the Saudi news agency, whatever its name was, referred to Pakistan as a sisterly country. So, एक जगह brotherly और I found that hilarious.
मोहम्मद बलोच साहब से पंजाबी लोग सिर्फ अपने उद्देश्यों के लिए धर्म का दुरुपयोग करते हैं, बाकी दुनिया बिल्कुल भी ऐसा नहीं करती।
हाँ, मैं आपसे सहमत हूँ। मैं मानता हूँ पंजाबी जो है बहुत ही प्रैक्टिकल अपना मफाद देखता है, जहाँ उसका फायदा होगा, और उसमें रिलीजन का भी उसमें मिसयूज करेगा, कुछ भी करेगा अपने फायदे के लिए। अच्छा, एक, इफ यू अलाउ मी, लेट मी रीड समथिंग टू यू, समथिंग वेरी वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग। In 1947 March, even before the creation of Pakistan, so there was this member of the Sindh Assembly, and this is what he had to say about the Punjabis. He says, Sayyid Noor Muhammad Shah, a Muslim League legislator, in a March 13, 1947 address in the Sindh Assembly, said the Punjabi Muslims never lose an opportunity to grab land, even if that meant demolishing houses, mosques, and even graves. They have such land grabbing instincts that in their vicinity, the Sindhi Musalman cannot find even an inch of land for burying their dead. What a stinging indictment of the Punjabi. So, आपने जो कहा बिल्कुल सही कहा. You know, the Punjabi, and I'm embarrassed. We are both Punjabis, Aadi and I. But the Punjabi Musalman is a different kettle of fish.
नहीं sir,
Pakistani Musalman.
हाँ, I say this very clearly, sir, and I will say this again. With
Pakistani
respect,
Punjabi.
my prayers for all the people that lost their lives during the partition. Terrible thing to happen. Population lost their money, lost their livelihoods, lost their lives. But I think when you look back, if that thing wouldn't have happened, we would have been stuck with these buffoons. And imagine what our country would be, sir.
There's another interesting point, a sidelight to that. You know, partition happened. One Pakistani scholar wrote, he said one of the reasons for radicalization in Pakistan is that all the Hindus and Sikhs left, and Punjab became 95% Muslim. He said before that, Punjab, the Hindus and Sikhs were at least about 30% of the population. Even if they had stayed on, we would not have had this radicalization in Pakistan. But can you imagine the sitting ducks the Hindus and Sikhs would have been in a Pakistan?
So I'm actually happy, and I say this very clearly. A lot of people get pissed off with me, and I say this. See, I have a thought process which I stand by, and I say, "Bhai, fair enough. We went through horrible times, but when we look back, we say, "Bach gaye bhais ki aankh." That's the only thing I would say, you know, because these guys are mad, and how they are kind of dealing with their country. And when you listen to them, there is no education. There is no, you know, and people say education to Zia ne badal di. Sir, people who are educated before Zia also is the same. You know, it's not that they were different. The guys who are educated in the 50s and the 60s, they're even, actually, some of them are even worse.
The anti-Ahmadi riots took place in the 50s.
Thank you very much.
Before Zia.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Absolutely. Okay. Naba Prashamji, thank you so much. Says, what is the Pamir knot? Where does it lie now? I heard Bharat's culture started from there. Can we bring our own social media app so they cannot shadow ban? You can bring your social media app, but the reach is what is important. YouTube has a global reach. Over to you, sir.
So this is, you know, as three mountain ranges. There's the Karakoram, the Hindu Kush, and the Pamirs. They meet in this Wakan corridor, which is called Baam-e Dunia. That is the roof of the world. The Persian word called Baam-e Dunia. And the Wakis have very close relationship to people of Munza, who in Gilgit-Baltistan. because they're all, a lot of them are also Ismailis. So that cultural connect is very much there with Gilgit-Baltistan, which is very much a part and parcel of India. So we can, but since it's been 70 years, no research, no connectivity has been there with India. We've lost that for the last 70 years. So very few people in India really know about these areas, what is spoken, what is the language, Waki, we even know like Bushaski, Sheena, Khabar, all these languages, all these people, we've lost. It's time we need to rediscover them, rediscover their roots with us and our roots with them.
Correct. Srinivasji, thank you so much once again. When Pakistan, US, or other countries interfere so much in our affairs, internal matters, why is India continuing to follow an old policy of not hitting back? If I may, there's a time and place for everything.
Yes, yes. And look at the power equations. Once when India became independent in 47, we were weak. The way after 100 years of colonization, 200 years of colonization British, our economy was in shambles. Education system was absolutely uprooted. We were a poor country. It has taken us 70 years get back and stand on our feet. And I think the next century, this century is going to be India's century. And then you
Yeah.
will see as the century progresses, people will start paying more attention and stop messing around with us. And perhaps we'll be in a position to make sure that nobody messes with us.
Parthaji, thank you so much. Very interesting question. How back in history was the first use of the word Pathan in this region? What is difference between Pathans and those who invaded Bharat before the British?
See, I'd explain this in my book on the Pashtuns. Um, would request you to either buy it or to read it from a library. You see, the British called the Pathans or the Pashtuns who were in touch with Persia as Pathans. They spoke Dari.
Yeah,
People who are in touch with India or but served in India and spoke Pashto, they were called Pathans,
Pathans.
right? And the reference to Pathans out of Pashtuns goes back many, many centuries. I think in one of the rock scriptures, this word is mentioned in Alexander's time also. This word was mentioned. So it goes back a very long time. Now, when the Pathans, they accompanied Mahmud of Ghazni and Mahmud of Ghori on the invasion route, and many of them stayed on.
Hmm.
And even subsequently with Ahmad Shah Durrani, they came and they stayed on. So you had Pathan or Pashtun dynasty. You have three dynasties in the Delhi Sultanate. You had the Lodhis, you had the Khiljis, and you had the Suris, who were dynasties that ruled in Delhi. Then you have Bhopal, which again was a Pashtun principality. You had the Rohilas, you had in Rohilkhand, Farrukhabad, and other places. So there has been a very strong going and coming. But it has not been a one-way traffic. Let's not forget that Chandragupta Maurya empire extended all the way up to Afghanistan. So did Ashoka. There's so many Ashokan inscriptions that have been found in Afghanistan. And then even before that, Gandhari of Mahabharat came ultimately from Peshawar.
Yeah.
So there has been a two-way traffic between India and current Afghanistan.
Desi stand, will ETIM get active soon? I think the CIA wants a regime change ASAP.
It's very difficult to say. I haven't studied the ETIM, but there is definitely a thorn in China's
I think we
flesh.
should, sir. I think it's high time we should study the ETIM. Why not? We plan the next show on it sometime in about 1 or 2, 3 weeks. We could actually discuss ETIM in a little detail. I think nobody's done that. It'll be very
Yeah.
interesting to go through what the hell this movement is. Akashji, this region is an erstwhile part of Bharat, Akhand Bharat. Salvation of this AFPAC region and people lie in its reverting to its rightful place in Bharat. Otherwise, it's a living hell. Your views?
You know, um, I think you can talk about it civilizationally. You
Yeah.
can talk in terms of cultural concepts. I don't think so. You can talk about it politically anymore. Nobody in today's world wants to change boundaries, geographical boundaries. But then how far back do you stop?
Except me, sir. Sorry.
How far back do you stop? The Greeks will claim, you
Yeah.
know, कि Alexander यहाँ आया था तो हमारा झेलम तक तो हमारी है. Then the Persians will claim we went down the Indus. Darius was here. So politically, I think it's difficult to claim that this was part of. But I think it's the civilizational and cultural aspects which one should explore, which one should stress, and talk about the civilizational past. I would
Yeah.
certainly plug for that, and less of a political concept.
Norman, thank you so much once again. He says entire military core is being built by built in Wakan by the Taliban.
Okay, I haven't come across. I
No,
know they
this
built
is
this Pamir
he
Road. I know they built this
he
Pamir.
he keeps a track of this area, sir, and he's from
Okay.
that area, so he keeps a track, and he
But why would they build
very
a core in Wakan? Where is the threat from? I would say they'd
E-
rather build a core in Spin Boldak or in Chaman or in, facing
ETIM,
Pakistan.
sir, ETIM.
But they don't need a core against the ETIM.
Don't need. They
They would.
probably need to stop it from entering Pakistan, entering China,
I don't think so. They'll do that.
because Chinese have two bases in Tajikistan. That's for sure. One on the
You
lip
see,
and
like
one.
the like the TTP, the ETIM also is a leverage that the Taliban have. Deniable
Yeah,
leverage.
that yeah. Troll another ISIK from Pakistan this time, but not Iraq to topple Assad, but against the Iranian Khamenei government.
ISIK from
Sir,
Pakistan.
ISIS is being used to attack the Iranians and various
Yeah.
other people, and
I
of
don't
course
think so. The Pakistan batting on its own can even think
can
of
do this.
a regime change in Iran.
No,
If they were to do it on behalf of Pakistan, Iran will come down on them like a ton of bricks.
yeah.
And there'll be a huge Shia reaction in Pakistan itself. I don't see Pakistan risking this at all.
That is exactly the first question that we spoke about. That when
Exactly.
Khomeini has come, he's also put the fear of the Lord in the Pakistanis. Listen, don't muck around too much because I have my leverage within you. Second
Yeah.
last one, sir. Rajesh ji says, Adi, why doesn't India help Afghanistan in setting up some industry so that they avoid mining contracts to China?
Uh, we haven't restarted the various projects that we were doing under President Karzai and Ghani. The Taliban are keen that we restart projects, but I don't think that India will break the international consensus by start doing these things at the moment. The Chinese are a different kettle of fish. They go into these troubled areas. But gradually, I think the Indian position always is gradualist. We're giving a lot of humanitarian assistance, medical assistance, and gradually, by and by, and as the earlier questioner said, if there are Indian companies working on mining projects, you see, each country will leverage the resources that it has. If mines are the resources that the Taliban have, then they will leverage that. Now, to set up manufacturing, which requires a heavy investment, and because of security situation, are sitting ducks. I don't know whether anybody will go in for manufacturing at the moment,
Mm.
or industry.
I mean, there is, if I may, there is some sort of backdoor stuff which is happening between India and Afghanistan, which nobody wants to confirm. But I guess India is taking its own time. And secondly, I think I'll add to what you said that the Chinese contracts with Afghanistan were signed under the Americans, by the way. So
Yeah.
that time was the great friendship between America and China. And the last one says, RKG, thank you so much. Interesting question. He says, 1947 होने के बाद पाकिस्तानियों की आंखों की सारी शर्म खत्म हो गई और उनकी कलेक्टिव सोच में एक टेक्टोनिक शिफ्ट आ गया था.
किस तरह से, अगर आप ज्यादा तफसील से बताएं, आंखों की
सर
शर्म कैसे खो गई?
एक टेक्टोनिक शिफ्ट तो वही है ना, बावले हो गए बेसिकली.
So ये हो सकता है कि because all the sort of people who could have kept them on the narrow path, the Hindus and the Sikhs were forced out. So they were left to their own devices. And you see, so long as you have an enemy to look at, why did the Muslim League come into prominence in the beginning? Because they were a minority in North India, in India. and they felt they are going to be become subject to the majority Hindu population. So they said we must have a country of our own. Now, when you have a country, so long as you're competing with Hindus, you are okay, you are band together. But once the Hindus have left, then you're competing with each other. फिर आपस में कत्लेआम होना शुरू हो गया ना, because of the sectarian issue, because Islam was not
Exactly
the
what you
glue.
said.
Yeah.
हिंदुओं के साथ official divorce हो गया.
Ah, exactly. That is why, for a Pakistani to be anti-Hindu is part of the idea of Pakistan.
Yeah.
Because
It's
they
the
believe in
DNA.
the two-nation theory. Yeah, it's the DNA.
Mhm. Sir, I must say this was a very educative conversation because it's going to add a certain angle to our Pakistan analysis going forward. I think we need to look at Pakistan a little more holistically rather than just the fault lines which are emerging. But these ethnic fault lines are something which are very, very dangerous. It's very, very, this thing, and these things can be played from the outside. I think that's one of the things that we must never forget. ये चीजें बाहर से लोग, people can control them because the Shias from here, the Sunnis from there, the Barelvis from there, the this thing from there, the this thing from there. So it's there's a lot of hodgepodge in that area. But thanks so much, sir. It's always a pleasure talking to you and learning from you. And we will get
Thank
back
you
to
so
you
much,
the
Adi.
next
Thank you
time.
for calling me. Thank you so much for calling
Thank
me.
you
It's
so much.
always a pleasure talking to you. It's always thought-provoking talking
Thank
to you and your audience, some excellent questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Jai Bharat.